Welcome to Worktapes. This is a podcast where we tear apart songs. Why was the song written? What's it about? What's the context and emotion behind it? Where were you at the time? What were you going through? How did certain lines come to you? What's the inspiration? How long did it take to write? I'm Brandon Carswell, and I'm fascinated with songwriting and how songs are built from the ground up. It's easy to hear a full production song on the radio and dismiss its origin story. I want to hear the rough draft of the song, or the work tape. I want to explore the very beginning of how songs that move us and make us move are born. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Worktapes. I'm Brandon Carswell. Today, we have on a special guest, in my opinion, a good friend of mine over the years, fantastic songwriter, singer, artist, band member. Goodness, I could say a billion things about you, but
thank you, man.
Welcome, Thad Cockrell.
Likewise, good to be here.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, man. Well, hell of an artist and a musician yourself, so it's always good to sit at the table and have a conversation around.
Well, I appreciate it.
Like-minded.
Oh my gosh. Well,
people.
I feel like so many times on this show, at least, I get to just hang out with my friends.
Right.
Because, just being in Nashville, and we have some history with North Carolina as well,
yeah.
Which takes it a little bit of a step further down the road for us, and mutual friends and all this stuff. And so it's a real treat for me to hang out with you again. It's been a long time.
Good to see you.
You too. And on this episode, what we're going to do, as usual, is we're going to kind of talk, hang out. We'll listen to a work tape of one of Thad's songs, kind of mid-episode. And that's pretty much it. It's going to be a good time.
Come on.
Just to start off, I would like you to, for those listening that don't know who you are, let's just take it on back. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why and how? Let's just start with the why. Why did you start in music, songwriting?
It's really interesting. I am the son of Alan and Janie Cockrell. I was born in Kansas City, Missouri. My dad was a pastor, grew up in church, no secular music, The only thing that was pretty much framed for me as a possible existence on this earth and the highest calling of all callings, and everything else you do besides that is a sheer cliff, down to, being a sheer mortal if you're not in full-time ministry, meaning like pastor or music director or whatever, but that was basically the thing that was framed for me. I grew up in Kansas City. Why did I start? I remember from an early age, I was maybe 5 or 6, had no context for this thought coming into my mind. It'd be like running through the desert and getting hit upside the head with an ice cream cone, like you're like, whoa, where does that come from? Because I didn't grow up in a music loving family.
But it was nice.
It was nice. I love ice cream. And, but it's not like I had, my parents were playing music in the house, and I was watching my dad preach, and I remember thinking, I guess that's what I'll do. And this thought that came into my head had to have been planted from something much greater than me, and I believe it was. And it was, they'll take a song home and they'll listen to it thousands of times, and they'll listen to a song before they'll listen to a sermon.
Oh.
And I don't know.
Where did that idea come from?
I would suspect.
You don't like listening to sermons?
The great cosmic yes is the one that planted the seed deep in my heart. And I remember getting, suspended from school all the time, kicked out 3 years in a row. It was a small Christian school. They're easy to get kicked out of. It was my dad's school. I was getting kicked out of my dad's school.
Perfect.
But
I want to hear those stories.
Yeah, right. And anyways, I was doing it in school suspension, and this guy that worked on my dad's staff there was like, that if nothing mattered, time, money, nothing mattered, what would you do? And my first thought, I remembered very clearly, was music, but the only kind of music I thought you could do was to lead the choir and play this lame ass music that I was hearing in the church. It wasn't necessarily fun music, you know? And so I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. I didn't know what the answer was, but I went home and I said, let me think about it. I knew it was an important enough of a question that I needed to think about it. So I went home and I found Steve the next day. I'm like, I got your answer. And he's like, what is it? And I was like, I guess I would help people. If money, time, nothing, I think I would just help people. And, it's interesting because, I grew up a jock. I was captain of the wrestling team, the football team. And I was a redneck, grew up in Tampa, Florida, when we were the first 9 years in Kansas City, the second 9 years in Tampa, Florida. And so anyways, I went to college to wrestle, and the first person that I'd ever met, and I was also completely obsessed with music growing up, like totally. I would stay up all night scrolling the radio dial, not station. And I remember thinking from a very young age, I'm a song person, not a genre person.
Okay.
Why you think that at a young age, I don't know, but I just knew it, And
you were listening to the radio because you couldn't listen to secular music.
Yeah, and I would stay up all night, and
secret.
Okay. Yeah, and it was an it kept me alive, really. In hindsight, I realized that those songs and those DJs, and they kept me alive, really.
Yeah.
The music was the one thing in my life that it gave me permission to feel whatever emotions it was that I was feeling, So, I went to college. I wrestled in college, and my assistant wrestling coach was the first person that I ever met that wrote songs and sang them. And it blew my mind. For some reason, I never equated it to real people. Like I never thought that it was actually, I don't know how it ever, I don't know. It was just such a dead end that I never even asked, who are the people that are doing these things? I wasn't the person that was reading all the liner notes,
Okay.
I was just obsessed with the songs. And anyways, I asked him, I was like, Jeff Durnland, I was like, how do you write songs? And he was like, it was the greatest answer. And it pissed me off at the time. I remember, I was like, how do you write songs? And he was like, there's no right or wrong way to do it. And I'm like, I'm mad because I think he has the cheat sheet and he's not letting me look.
That answer still makes me mad, actually.
But there's it's so true. And I said, when's the verse? When's the chorus? I think there's a bridge, and he's like, you can do any of it in any way you want. Yeah. And I remember somewhere around that same time, he said, I was leaving his room, and he said, you'd like Neil Young. And I'd never heard Neil Young. I didn't know who Neil Young was. And I was like, huh. And a couple weeks later, I'm laying on my bed after wrestling practice, getting iced down, and I put on the earphones to listen to the local radio station, and they were like in the middle of like an 8-song block, and I was listening, and this song comes on, and it was my moment. It was I completely bawled my eyes out. I remember thinking, that's what I've got to figure out how to make something that beautiful. And I don't write, I don't play, I don't sing, I don't do any of it.
How old are you at this point?
I'm in college, and I knew it was Neil Young. Mm-hmm. I was like, that's Neil Young. I knew it was Neil Young. And sure enough, I waited for the DJ to give the backlog of what songs he played, and he's like, and that's Neil Young's new song, Harvest Moon. And, to answer, it's a long way to get to your answer, but why? And it's because I'm trying to make something beautiful. Yeah. I want to make something beautiful.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you because, like you mentioned, your story is a little bit different. I mean, everyone's is different, but a lot of times as kids, a lot of the stories go like, oh, I saw so-and-so on TV or whatever, and I wanted to be a star.
Yeah.
I wanted to
or I saw this person play the guitar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's not your story. And I like that the story is different in the regards, like you're after the song, like the song was chasing you. at the same time you were finding it. But the overarching question for me is starting later, like you did.
I didn't start playing music till after college.
Right. And so a lot of kids will have that dream, like I mentioned, and that vision. They'll get going on some guitar or whatever they're going to do, or sing and play in church or whatever the story is. What's the benefit of starting later? Because we know the benefits of starting young is what it is.
I've thought about this a lot, and that's a great question. Yeah, I sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I would have started earlier. But there's so many other things that I learned from playing sports that I needed for me in my journey, my story. I needed to learn grit. I think it's what I wish my musician friends had more of, is grit, is defiance, is getting beat one play and getting up and saying, I'll rewrite the story. Give me a minute, losing a wrestling match, and you only have yourself to blame. And you think, I didn't make up my mind that I was going to win that match before I got on the mat, and therefore I didn't win. Yeah. And I think that is the thing that I am eternally grateful for, that starting later in life gave me the opportunity to do. I learned social skills that a lot of musician friends don't always learn. I think they hang out with. I think we can hang out with each other, and we communicate through music, which is beautiful, And but I think there's something else to learning to communicate just as a human being, person to person, and there's no instrument in between. And it's just heart to heart, eye to eye, and I'm really grateful for that. And also, it put me, I am not I don't know theory. I don't know much of anything, but I do know what I love. And when you start late, the only thing you have as your guide is what you love and what makes you feel good. And, I started learning to play the guitar, writing songs, playing out, and recording all at the same time. And people are like, that's not true. I'm like, believe me. Yeah. I was playing in this coffee shop for 2 hours. I barely knew how to strum the guitar and sing at the same time. I knew 3.5 songs. And of course, once I played those 3.5 songs, I would just repeat the first verse twice. And when those people left, I would take a break, of course, a vocal break after that amount of songs. And then when new people came in, I would play the same songs. And I decided that I wanted to start trying to write a song every week. And then I did. And then I started recording within months of that. And I remember driving to the studio the first time, and I remember thinking, God, I hope I can get the chords right and remember the songs. And it was a band, and they were amazing players. It was this band, a lot of the players that were in this band called Whiskey Town, minus Ryan. And, I just didn't, I didn't keep what I didn't know from stopping me on any level. Right. And I think what happens with musicians is a lot of times we all think that we've got to be to a certain place before we start whatever it is that we begin. Right. And since I didn't know better, I just did it. I'm forever grateful for that.
What was the early process of writing like for you? Were you banging your head against the wall trying to get it right? Or was it more of what you just said, like, I'm just going to do what I hear. If I like it, then I'll play it.
Yeah, that was it, man. Yeah. I I wasn't running it by anyone.
What was your reference? Like what were you listening to in those days?
You know, what's interesting is that's a great question. I remember my reference was, I remember thinking, I want to do it all. And this is, I think, a really, like, the lack of encouragement. Like, I wonder what would have happened if I would have had the right encouragement in my life. Because I remember I was backing out of my I had a family brown station wagon, backing out of my gravel driveway. And I'm so in my head, I'm like, how do I start this? You know, like, how do I start this thing? And I remember thinking, I wanted to do it all, but I didn't know how to do it all. And then I was like, I think I can wrap my mind around country music.
Right.
I'll start there. And so I did. I started doing like old school country records, which I was obsessed with. And, but I wonder what it would have looked like if I would have had somebody in my life that I would have been processing that with, and they would have said, hey, Thad, it's not about what you can wrap your head around. Art is about what you can't wrap your head around. And what would it look like if you just started the whole thing right now? Like, do all of it right now. And in a lot of ways, that's why I feel like The Kid, which is the album I just released in the past year, a lot of ways it feels like the first album that I've actually made as what I would have done from the very beginning. And it sounds like the scroll of the radio dial. You know, there's everything on it. There's R&B, there's pop songs, there's country songs, there's singer-songwriters, there's like weird like songs that would make you feel more like you're, you know, when I'm writing songs, I'm not referencing songs as I want it to sound like. I wanted to feel like I felt when I heard my favorite songs growing up for the first time. Yeah. So I was chasing that feeling, you know, so it's like, whether that be Pink Floyd or whatever it was, I was chasing the feeling of hearing my favorite songs again for the first time.
And that's hard to do for a record. Like, I've followed you long enough to know that you've done that over like your whole catalog so far. You know, like, for example, I've seen you play like a folk song and then turn around and cover Idiotech or whatever by Radiohead.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You went from here to here. Like, this is not the same.
No, but I think that's how we listen to music. It's how I listen to music.
Me too, yeah.
And so that's why I don't understand why we make records that, I'm not opposed to it, but I don't understand why we can't, like, why do records need to be of a genre?
Right.
You know, whatever. It's just songs, man. It's just songs, and let music be what it is. And
I think nowadays maybe it's easier for that, at least for people to swallow like a record that's multi-genred just for singles and streaming, but
I hear it more in like the urban space, like hip hop, but it still doesn't go as hard as I wish it did.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to hear a Tyler Creator, you know, album where he's doing what he does, and then he's literally singing a country song.
Sure.
And then he's singing like an Al Green R&B song, because I know that dude loves all of it.
Yeah.
You know, I can hear it. I can hear that he loves all of it. So I don't know. You know, I think I've tried to make a career out of writing the songs that I don't hear, making the music that I wish belonged, that isn't being made, you know.
Does it ever mess with you?
All the time. All the time. I always, yes, I try to err on the side of bravery, but, yeah, I'm
what's the messing with? What is it? Is it the, this is not a prepared question at all, but is it the, like, I need to stay to industry standards. I need to not push the envelope, or what are people going to think of this? Am I going to lose fans? All of those things.
Yeah. All of it.
Yeah.
All of it. You know, I think even when I started Leagues, what I would tell my then self is, you know, like there's a lot of people that love this album that I made, To Be Loved, but To Be Loved completely wrecked my career. You know,
why?
I kind of hate it. I kind of hate the album. I mean, I get it. I love it.
Sure.
But I mean, I was, you know, a critic's darling, making like alt country, you know, like, you know, I never understood alt country. I was like,
but for songs, it's a fantastic album.
Thank you. But you know, I was making like old school country records, and I got offered a deal in 2006 on Sony to do a country record, and I just realized the only thing that country wanted back then was honky donk badonky donk and big and rich, and that's cool for them to make that music. I believe that music is very true to who those individuals are, but I couldn't do that if I tried. And the American public, if anything, has an incredible sniffer, and they can smell some BS, and they would have smelled it all over me, And so I was poor. I needed the money, and I remember telling the A&R guy, I hate to say no to this, but I have to. And once I said that, I was like, okay, well, what else are we gonna do? And then so I made To Be Loved, and that connected with people in a way that music that I had made previously had never connected. But the people that loved all my country records, they hated it.
Yeah.
They did not get it at all. They wanted me to keep making that. And then after To Be Loved, the songs that came to me were not To Be Loved. It was Leagues,
Right.
And I was like, there's no way they're going to understand. So I went under a band name called Leagues. My now self would be like, no, you're not going under a band name. That's you.
Yeah.
It's all you,
Yeah.
You're not going to hide, and, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot from doing that. And, I'm really grateful for it. But yeah, I've been on this long journey of making lots of different kinds of music. And, now I don't even think about others when I'm doing it. It's just between, I'm just chasing my own joy.
Yeah.
And asking that I keep getting sent great songs, which is what I've prayed for from the very beginning. I'm like,
Sure.
Please send me great songs.
Right.
And let the mediocre ones just float on by,
Yeah.
So, that's kind of been the journey in a lot of ways.
Well, let's talk about that journey.
Yeah.
Because it's been up and down kind of all around for you.
Oh yeah.
It's been moments of, are you going to keep doing it? Are you not?
Yeah.
I'm like we discussed a little bit earlier, like
Does
you
it
get in
mess
your
with
head.
you?
Yeah, it messes with you.
Yeah.
And
if you're looking at other people's success and your friend's success, whatever success is, as you define it,
which living in this town is hard. It's hard not to see
brutally
because,
hard.
When you're in a pickle or you're in a moment or whatever.
Well, you're in a season
artist,
of winter,
yeah,
and your friends are in a season of harvest. It's really hard for you to be okay with everything looking barren and dead.
Yeah. And it's really hard not to see everything else blooming.
Oh,
and then
yeah,
it's a mess in your mind. It definitely is. But you have a history of coming out of those things, coming back. I want you to talk about the Jimmy Fallon thing.
Yeah.
For people that don't know, I was so excited when I saw that happen. It was just like one of those underdog stories that we definitely needed at the time, and you needed at the time personally.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was just like, I'll let you tell the story because I don't want to botch it up. But what happened with that?
Well, I think there's so many incredible things that happen with it that would take a long time to explain. But, I made this album called If In Case You Feel the Same with a dream team of, I got to make it with the guy that produced it, and I produced some of the songs with him, but his name was Tony Berg, and he's just an absolute incredible human being. And what I learned from him, I'm forever grateful for. And I, Blake Mills played on it, and Chris Dave was playing drums. It was, if you would have told me in 2016 the people that I was going to be making my next record with, I wouldn't have I would have been like, and how is that going to happen?
Yeah.
But it started. I was making these demos, or I was making recordings to the best that I could. I hate to even call it demos, and serendipitously, Brittany Howard showed up at my house one evening, and I played these songs for her, and she, flipped out. She's like, "I don't like anything. This stuff's amazing. What are you doing with it?" And one thing leads to another, and I'm all of a sudden I'm working with her manager and in her label, which is ATO, which is an amazing label, and so the song comes out in the middle of the pandemic. Nothing was happening with it.
Right.
I didn't even have a publicist. And at that point, I'm like, well, I think I've done everything I can do here. I don't, I don't know. I've had I've got this killer team around me, and if nothing's going to happen from this, maybe it's time to just move on. And I was really okay with it. And, I had my master's in family therapy. So I was like, maybe I'll start doing some therapy. And it just about literally, I sent a letter to my manager one morning, and I just said, hey, here's the things of what I want to try to do this year. And if you don't think that we can do them, let me know. And he called me within 15 minutes and was like, hey, this isn't about the letter. We got a phone call from the Tonight Show. Jimmy Fallon heard your song. In a heart, he didn't know, we didn't know then. He's like, he heard your song, and it's been his anthem through this whole crazy pandemic. And you're going to be the first artist to play the Tonight Show, and the Roots are going to be your band.
It's wild. Did you hang up? Like, you're just kidding.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to explain.
Yeah.
Getting a phone call like that, because I know all the things that need to happen in order to even get to play on the Tonight Show.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have publicists, you need to have that momentum. Like I didn't have anything, but I did, and I had God.
Yeah,
and I'll take that over momentum. God doesn't need momentum, and He doesn't need a publicist. He doesn't need anything really, and I think more than anything, needs like willingness and bravery, and I think he's really down, or she is really down with that, and so, anyways, I was when he told me this, I thought like, so who's gonna? I need to rehearse a band. And he's like, no, the Roots are going to be your band. So, anyways, I got booked to do that on January 2nd to play on January 26th. And somewhere around the 15th, I got dropped by my label. I was dropped by my label before I ever actually played the Tonight Show.
I didn't know that part.
Well, nobody does.
Yeah.
So I'm giving you the
exclusive beef.
And I don't know. I don't want to say it's a beef. All I said was, I just told my lawyer, hey, if they're not going to do something, I knew something special was going to happen.
Yeah.
I just knew it. I was like, oh, okay, it's go time. And so anyways, I told my lawyer, I said, hey, tell them if they're not going to do anything with this album, just to let me go. Like, let me, And they're like, oh yeah, we want to give Thad the opportunity to spread his wings and fly. Said no dude to a girl that he actually liked, So anyways, I ended up playing the Tonight Show. I had a false positive the day of the recording.
Okay.
And that's why I wasn't in the studio, and he never told anyone. I never told anyone, but we had a false positive the day of. Like, I'm literally, I met him.
That's so frustrating.
Oh man. And, I went the day before, and we took, my buddy Riley and I had to take a test to even get on the plane, came back negative. The day before, we went up to 30 Rock. I met Jimmy at the elevator. Beautiful, small conversation that really stunning. And I was like, if I thought I liked this guy then, my God, I love him so much more now.
Yeah.
And that test came back negative, and they're like, well, tomorrow it's going to be really fast. You're going to do another rapid test. And so anyways, I go up there and we take the test, and they were like, it's going to take only 10 minutes. And we're 25 minutes in. And I looked at my buddy Riley, I'm like, dude, what if what if one of us have a positive? He's like, no, we both had COVID in the last 6 weeks. We've been what do you call it when you're away from everyone?
Oh, the quarantine.
Quarantined.
Yeah.
And, we just took 2 negative. Well, sure enough, they came and got me, and they, like, hey, Thad, can you come with me? And I was like, something doesn't feel right about this. And I go in this room by myself, and I just know, and the phone rings, and it's this lady, and she's like, hi, Thad, I'm so sorry about the confusion. I'm like, what's the confusion? She's like, well, I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you or not. I work with human, resources, but your test came back positive. And I got off the phone and I just started laughing my ass off, because I'm like, man, this is like a Bill Murray movie. And if we were watching this, we would all laugh, Right. And I was like, did I really think I was just going to come up here and sing if I'm going to go down swinging, or if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down swinging. This is part of the story. And then I just kind of made up in my mind. I'm like, I don't know what it looks like. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And although I can't imagine it, I just believe that I'm getting the upgrade somehow, Right. And so we ended up doing the show, it was off for about 2 hours. And then the producer called back and said, hey, we're going to have you, we're recording it now with the Roots, and we're going to have you do it from the hotel room. So we filmed the whole episode. And
somebody had to come in, because you said it was off for 2 hours. So somebody had to say, no, we're going to do it anyway. Right.
Well, Jimmy was really distraught. The lady called me back and said, hey, just so you know, Jimmy's distraught, because by then it had kind of gone viral. Like lots of people.
Because he had prefaced it the night before, right?
No, he didn't preface it the night before. I played on a Tuesday. I've never seen a late night host do this with anyone. He went on the Friday before I played, and he took 4 minutes, and he stopped the whole show, and he told the Roots about the story of hearing my album in a hardware store and him Shazamming it. And then he's playing air guitar while the chorus hits. Yeah. And I'm watching this, and I'm like, what is going on here, And then he talked about it that Monday, and then he basically made the whole episode about the song Swingin'. And then we did the song, and then 2 days later, I did a 9-minute interview on the Today Show, and the song goes number 1 in the world and number 2 album in the world on Apple, where people were buying it. And
a record that, in your words, was basically dead.
No, not basically. It was dead. Like dead.
Yeah.
Like, and
it's a fantastic record. It's so good.
Thank you.
And I understand, like, logically how records don't come up, but man,
I believe in that record a lot. It's really special, and everyone. Oh yeah, I'm crazy about that album. And
all I Want is my favorite song.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I just re-recorded it for the country record I made.
It's like a Springsteen kind of thing to me. Mm-hmm. It's like a rock and roll. Mm-hmm.
So, what's interesting though is as interesting as that is, it's not the most interesting part of the story, because what came from it was nothing. Like I got dropped by my label and parted ways with my manager, and within 3, and they did nothing with it. Like couldn't have done less with it. They did the bare minimal, that they had to, just because it would have looked really bad, so they went back to radio, but they didn't do anything. There was nothing. And man, it was disheartening beyond. It's hard to describe, to have that kind of, and I didn't make a penny from it. And And it's hard to describe how to go from that high of a high and that fast to go back to having absolutely nothing. And you literally are a month out from having all of that. Yeah, it's tough.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for two things, and then we'll move on from this part. But I want to know, before that happened, were you about to give it up?
Yeah,
entirely?
Absolutely.
Like as a job, you were going to move on.
Yeah. I think if anybody does this long enough, they're like, oh, I quit.
Yeah.
But they don't really quit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't not write, but.
Yeah. But this time when I said I'm done, like I was done, you know?
Yeah.
And, one of the things that goes back to one of your earlier questions is when everything didn't happen, I was just like, now's the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
It's go time. Whether everybody or nobody believes it, it's go time. And so I dug in, and instead of making an angry sounding album, and I lost my dad had cancer at the time, and we knew he didn't have much longer. But I dug in and I said, man, I'm going to make I'm going to make the album of my dreams.
Yeah.
And I want to alchemize my pain into something beautiful. And I ended up making The Kid. And it's the most fun thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
When I got finished with it, the day that we got the masters back, I did something I'd never done to any album, but I wrote a thank you letter to the music and just thanked it for changing my life.
Yeah.
It helped.
Of course.
So once again, music is this thing that like kept me alive. You know? I mean, I wouldn't have died if I hadn't have made The Kid, but it was so life-giving, you know?
Yeah, there's other ways to die than to die.
Yeah,
right?
You know?
So yeah, music does that.
Yeah.
And part of the second thing I wanted to mention about that story is you said after all of that, I still didn't come away with, what people may think you came away with, money or whatever.
Yeah.
But what you did come away with is we got to see, and you got to see it more than us. We saw a person in Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
Who connected with a piece of music so much.
Yes.
That he had to fight for you to be on.
Oh yeah. I know he did.
And that is incredible to me.
Yeah, man.
Even forget who he is in his platform.
Well, people don't, everything makes sense in hindsight, right? But I tell you how incredible this dude is. Of course, the Roots. No. They were on their way to extinction. Like the Roots weren't.
Right.
I'm a massive fan. Don't get me wrong.
Same, yeah.
But they were on their way out to pasture. No one was thinking who is going to have a massive impact in the culture of music. No one would have picked the Roots.
Sure.
But Jimmy. And that is such a brave, incredible move. It's actually like really punk rock of him. Now I bet he was just like, what do you mean? Who would you not want?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. But there's nobody else that would have picked the Roots. What a move, And really, I the day after I played, when I met Jimmy, he said something else that was really incredible. He said, hey Thad, he was like, I'm standing at the elevator and I hear my name and I looked at my buddy Riley He's like, Thad. And I turn around and it's Jimmy and he has his mask on. We both immediately get emotional. And he's like, man, he was like, my wife and I, we love your music and this song and this story is just helping so many people out. And I'm like, Jimmy, I don't think you have any idea, man. Thank you so much. Well, I left that. It was about that long. He's like, I'll see you tomorrow. It's going to be great. His elevator dings. They wouldn't even let us on the same elevator. He goes up. And I remember thinking after I was going back to the hotel after doing the rapid test, I remember thinking, it's my experience that 99% of the people that I meet would have said the word I like your music. And it was my wife and I. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this he's a we guy. He's a team, you know? Yeah. And I love we people, man. Yeah. And at some point you got to get over yourself and create something really special with people. And, you know, and from that, you know, I did 3 interviews with him, Rolling Stone, People, and the American Songwriter, and they would talk to him first, and then they would call me, and I think all of them said the same thing. Definitely one of them said, "Hey, Jimmy says you don't need to dedicate an album, but he does want a song." And so I was like, "Oh, all right, he's picked the right dude, and I got to write him a banger." So I ended up thinking about that, and I did some research on he and his wife, and they told their whole story. And at one point, he says, "You know, I remember what you were wearing the first time I ever met you." And she's like, "No way." And he's like, "Yeah, you had this white pants and this pink sweater and this green bag." And she's like, "Oh my God, that green bag, that's exactly what I was wearing." So anyways, I ended up writing a song. It's their prom song. I acted like I was hiring the Huey Lewis and the News from the 80s to produce their song because that's awesome. So his vibe. Yeah. But it's on the kid. It's called Right Place at the Right Time. Okay. And it's their song. That's great. And it was given to them on Valentine's Day this past year by a mutual friend. They got their love song from a mutual friend, played it for them on Valentine's Day.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. I love that dude, man. I wouldn't have been able to make the kid without him, man.
Yeah, and my whole point in saying that at all was,
and his wife Nancy.
Yeah, was that the validation you got to keep going.
Yeah.
If that's all you got, that's enough.
Well, you know, what's also really wild is shortly after I lost my dad, but after that happened, this is the greatest gift he gave me, is after that happened, my dad never talked to me the same again.
Interesting. Wow. Like you were being prepared.
Yeah, but my dad, the tone, my dad respected me in a way. He had
I see what you mean.
He had always thought that I was on a fool's errand.
Sure.
You know? When's he going to stop? I felt it every time.
Yeah.
Felt it every time I interacted with my dad as an adult. And after that, never.
Man, wow. That's intense.
It's intense.
As a creative, I mean, I think if a million creatives were listening to this, all of us would resonate with that.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Like when are you taken seriously?
Yeah.
When are you going to get a real job?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's horrible.
Yeah.
You know, and I think about, this is one of the things it's the reason why I released the album the way I did. And I'm creating a platform. You know, one of the things that I would like to do in my lifetime is leave the business of music. I don't know about the music business, which is all built on extraction. But I want to add.
Yeah.
I don't want to extract. And I want to create an economy around the business of music.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that. And you know, I want to change the narrative, and it's a horrible narrative of starving artists. Mm-hmm. And you know, if a kid goes to his parents and says, you know, I'm going to become a heart surgeon, the parent will think this is going to be very hard. You're going to have to study, but thank God he's going to have money.
Exactly.
But he's going to be rich, you know, or he's going to do okay. And, you know, whereas you take the exact same kid and he goes to his mom and dad and he says, "Hey, mom and dad, I'm going to play drums for a living." Oh, You're going to be a starving artist and it's not a real job and everything. But here's the deal, man. Have you ever had your heart healed by a heart surgeon?
Yeah.
Have you?
No.
Neither have I.
I
don't know hardly.
By a drummer.
But have you by a song?
Yeah.
Millions of times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's change that. It's ridiculous. You know, I want to create a whole new economy around music. There should be.
Let's talk about that, because you're shaking things up with how you're releasing or have released this record.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about a song called What If.
Yeah.
Let's go and listen to the work tape of What If. This is just you and your piano, super stripped back, and then we'll kind of talk about What If and then what you're doing with the whole record. Is that cool?
I love it.
Cool.
Na, 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 na. What if I told you something I'm thinking, something I couldn't unsay? And what if I showed you how I am feeling, feelings that won't go away? And what if the right words come out the wrong way, but the wrong way's the best that I got? What if the full moon lit up the mountains we climb? What if the skies opened up and the sun just shined, and all the pain we've ever known is the road that led us home to us, like a guiding hand from above? And what if we follow the love in our hearts? What if it's such a great place to start? Na, 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 I know I might not be exactly everything that you had in your mind. One look at you and the whole world stopped, even time. Your smile's a revelation. I got no hesitation. You'll always be the beautiful one, and I think you're better than luck. What if the full moon lit up the mountains we climb? What if the skies open up and the sun just shine, and all the pain we've ever known is the road that led us home to us, like guiding it from above? What if we follow the love in our hearts? What if it's such a great place to start? Na, 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 na. Na, 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 na. What if
Okay. I love this song. I'm a geek about the Worktapes. I always have been since I can remember. So getting to hear like the production version on a record and then A-Bing it with just you and your piano is so much fun for me to listen to. I think a lot of fans probably would like it.
Yeah, right.
And is this work tape just you at home?
Just me at home on the piano that I wrote that song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that where you do a lot of writing?
It's where I do, yes, it's where I do pretty much 100% of my writing.
Yeah.
And at my home on the piano or on the guitar or no instrument at all.
Yeah.
You know, for about 6 years, I didn't write songs on any instrument. The entire time I was in leagues, I didn't write it. I didn't write a song for 6 years on an instrument at all.
I remember being at breakfast with you once, and you were clearly not paying attention to anything we were saying. And I was like, "What's up with this dude?" And you're like, "I'm sorry, I've got a song in my head," and you start writing it down. This is early on, so I was like, "Now I know Thad is always writing." It was great. It was brilliant. I want to be like that, but I'll
thank you for being gracious. Thank you for being gracious. I have since done a lot of work in therapy around what it looks like for me to be present with people.
I thought it was cool. I was just thinking, man, I wish songs downloaded like that for me while I'm sitting there eating pancakes or whatever. But that,
yeah,
Anyway, what if?
What if? I have so many friends that have told me the same story, and I'm like, y'all, thank you for putting up with me. But I also know that my friends wouldn't want me to not write it down, you know?
Of course.
But but it's not missed on me the kindness and grace that they extend to me to let me.
Could you imagine if you were like all you did was you were like a painter and you had to, hold on guys, I gotta go.
Oh paint. Man, I someday I'll get married, and I apologies to my wife beforehand, you know, like I'm so sorry.
Yeah. But when it's happening, you got to get it out or you'll lose it.
Yeah. I've just never, I made a deal, man. I just made a deal.
You can't lose it.
If it comes to me, I write it.
Yeah.
And you know, my first producer told me something I'm forever grateful for, and he gave me permission to do that. He said, Thad, he was like, listen, man, if you end up 30 minutes late to a party, whatever it is.
Isn't that always when the song hits, by the way?
Or whatever it is, just keep doing it. Yeah. We're all waiting for you to give us the next song. So don't be so pragmatic. Just go with the flow. And man, Chris Stamey, thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving me the license, because I grew up in a home where, you know, that would not be said. Yeah. You know, you put other people first all the time. Yeah. You know.
Yes.
Yeah.
This song, What If?
Yeah.
Is a wonderful song.
Thank you.
It doesn't, I mean, the title kind of tells you what it's about. But also not really. Kind of way. Right. Yeah. But it's kind of like a hopeful what if, isn't it?
Oh, it's insane. Yeah, man. It's
Was this like a personal what if, or was this, I guess my question is this song about your music journey? Is this song, because I could listen to it a few different ways. This could be a song where God is talking to you, the listener. This could be a song where you literally wrote it about your journey or wrote it about a person.
Yes. To all the above.
Mm-hmm.
To all the above. And it's why it's the first song on the album. You know, if you go back to the story I was telling you, you know, I was really heartbroken by what didn't come from it. But I believed in my heart, and still do, that no, it's just the setup for the big. This is just the jab before the hook, man.
Yeah.
and to write a song full of that much hope, in what looks like hopelessness, and then the loss of my dad, in 2000, when I was in LA, I started writing screenplays. And so a dear friend of mine, Don, had a book that was turned into a movie, and he was like, dude, I'm going to send you the best 2 books I've ever read on screenplay. And I was reading one of the chapters, and it was on premise, the chapter on premise. And 2018, I read this sentence, and it knocked me off literally, I was just like, wow, that's so incredible. And I kind of always lived my life that way, but had never quite put it in such a succinct idea or thought. But the chapter on premise, there was a sentence, and it said, the premise to every great story begins with what if. Mm-hmm. And I wrote it down in my journal, and I thought about it and thought about it and I thought about it. And the first song that I wrote when I moved into my home, the first home that I'd ever bought in 2021, my parents, now this is cool. They gave me a housewarming gift, and it was a piano. And the first song that I wrote on that piano was What If.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Did you use that piano on the record? Did you use that?
Oh, yes.
You did.
I had a different piano that was in a nicer studio. And I was just like, man, this just doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
And so I brought my guy that was helping me make this record, an engineer, and he had a little mobile recording thing, and I played it on the piano. And as soon as I played it on the piano, the exact same thing, the whole recording opened up.
Yeah.
It was wild. I'd never heard anything give that much life to a recording. It was just the sound of that piano in that room. But that piano in that room is the sound, is why I wrote that song. There's a vibe in this room that's wild. And I
love that.
There's a natural, it's not much reverb at all, but there's a liveness to the room that makes you want to play it. And anyways, yeah.
Space is so important.
So important.
For writing, for all of that.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the feel of an instrument. We were just talking about that before we started recording. You can pick up any old guitar, but they all have a different thing.
100%. Tony Berg did something to me, or did something with me that blew my mind. He's so genius, but I think it was swinging. It was swinging.
Okay.
And we had the acoustic, and we had this one acoustic on it, and it just didn't sound good. And he was like, it's not the right guitar. Now, we had an acoustic on there, and he's like, it's not the right guitar. It needs Brazilian rosewood. He's like, let me get and he had a guitar with Brazilian rosewood on it. And I played the exact same thing. And
different song,
man.
Yeah.
And he was like, those, the woods, there's guitars in those woods. Actually, they're different for a reason. And I'd never really thought that was true. I was like, wait a minute, guitar is a guitar.
Yeah.
No.
Man.
They speak very differently. They sit in mixes very differently.
They write differently.
Completely. Even this LG1, as soon as I picked it up, this Gibson LG1, I picked it up and I played it, and I immediately wanted to play it a certain way.
Yep. You start writing something you haven't even.
Yes.
Yeah.
It just starts happening.
That's beautiful. I love when that happens.
Yeah.
My favorite lyric in What If is, what if the right words come out the wrong way, but the wrong way is the best that I got. That's such a resonating line for me, because that happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
I could say the right thing the wrong way, which is why I started a podcast, so I can do it in front of everyone.
Yeah.
But seriously, that line just nailed me to the wall. Do you have a favorite line in this song? Or do you go far enough down your own songs to have favorite lines?
Wow, a favorite line. It's actually what I wanted to name the song, but my buddy, who's my he where I go full in artist. He's like, and he's my creative director, and he's a weirdo too. And he's an artist, you know, but he is my, if there's anyone that I let give me rein, you know, put reins on me, be like, hey, why don't you, you know, maybe not like, let's go hard in the paint, but maybe not hard in the paint. I wanted to name the song, I Think You're Better Than Luck.
Okay. That's a great line.
Yeah. To me, that's my...
Yeah, my first pass through this song, I thought it was Love. And then I heard the CK on it, and I was like, oh, that's better. That's a better lyric.
It's way better.
Yeah.
It's, and I still think maybe it should have been, because what if everyone's going to know, you know, what I like about naming it, that one lyric is it will be something that won't be missed now. It's like, that's, you know, so like on the new version of All I Want that I recorded for the country record that I just made called The Kid Goes Country. And I made it as a thank you gift to everyone that bought the kid. Right.
Okay.
And I'm not going to name it All I Want. I'm going to name it my favorite line out of that. It's going to be called Busted Lip.
Yeah. That's a great line in that song too. Totally unexpected. There's one thing that I love about your writing and your vocals is the same thing, is that something always is surprising. There's always like a surprising lyric or a surprising melody. I remember one of the first times I saw you sing was at church in Raleigh.
Oh yeah.
And you were singing, you weren't even leading the song, but you were up there singing and doing melodies or harmonies. And I remember just being like, man, even those harmonies are different. Like you're never going to go straight down. That is always like, nope, I'm going over here. And it's just enough of a surprise and just unique enough to kind of like make your ear prick a little in a good way. And anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'm intentional about that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you know, I have some younger artists that I mentor, and I said, you know, the job of an artist is not to say it like everyone else.
Sure.
The job is to say something that everyone else is thinking in a way that they hadn't said it.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying anything new.
Yeah.
Believe me, I'm not. There's nothing new. You know, you can call my lyrics. I'm not Dylan. I am not. There's really nothing new, but I do want to try to say it in a way that only I could say that. And to me, that's the greatest gift that I could. I feel like I'm not robbing the bank. I'm not just taking.
Sure.
I'm like giving something back. But yeah, you know, go back to your. I think you're better than luck. And I think you're better than luck. I mean, to be lucky is, you know, they say it's better to be lucky than anything.
Yeah.
And to say you're better than luck to me. I don't know. What a thing to have said.
What a charmer.
You know?
It's a good line.
It's a good line.
It's a good pickup line.
It is.
It might be. It might.
You know, maybe.
It might bomb.
To the right woman though, she's like, oh God, get over yourself. You know, hit me with that stuff.
Let's talk about the kid.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is a subject we could talk a long time about.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about it because you kind of, when you announced this record and how you were going to do it, this really shouldn't be that dramatic.
No.
But it is, because this is the culture this is the world we live in.
Yes.
Tell us how you're releasing it, why it's important to release it this way, and maybe go into how it's been received so far.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's been a whole lifelong journey of me, you know, a part of me is a completely weirdo artist, and the other half of me is I've got a very business entrepreneurial mind, and a lot about the music business has never made any sense to me. And the problem with the music business as is once things toxic ideas become normalized, they're no longer viewed as toxic.
Right.
But I remember thinking, I'm in 2000, I'm reading an article. Well, the first songs that I ever wrote, I'll start with this. The first songs that I ever wrote, I barely knew how to write songs played guitar and sing at the same time. I made a recording of them. That album's called Stack of Dreams. First, I recorded the first 8 songs I ever wrote. Stack of Dreams. I go to the CD store on Tuesday because that's when it gets released back then. And I illegally parked in front of School Kids Records on Hillsborough Street.
Kids, yes,
and,
I remember School Kids.
Of course,
both of us,
right?
Yeah.
And so, anyways, I run in there and I want to see if I got my own like placard, Thad Cockrell.
Mm-hmm.
I did not. Room to grow. But I picked up my CD and there it was for $9.99, and I was like, oh, I can't believe there it is. It's in the actual stores. Mm-hmm. And then right next to me is my favorite songwriter of all times, ABCD, Bob Dylan. And so I pick up his new album, and it is as well $9.99. And I remember thinking then my album shouldn't cost the same as Bob Dylan's.
Yeah. Why not?
I'm glad I cut the line, but my album shouldn't cost the same as Bob Dylan's. And why? Because they're not the same value. And the problem with the music business is they treat music like a monolith, and it just isn't. And no other business is anything created as a monolith. Like, you want a guitar? Well, every guitar is $30.
Right.
Well, I want to go source the most amazing woods, and I want to like spend my whole life. It doesn't matter. It's $30. You're like, well, that doesn't make sense for me because I want to make something great, but it's clearly making sense for somebody.
Yeah, literally making sense.
Yeah, and so these are all ideas that I've just been walking around with. And a lot of times I'm like, why do I think about this stuff, And now I know, I'm grateful for it. But I remember also reading about in Mojo magazine, there was a long form story about one of my top 5 favorite albums of all times, which was Marvin Gaye's What's Going On. And at that point, Marvin Gaye was a black man singing white man's music. He was singing The Algorithm. And the head of Motown Records, Berry Gordy, was printing money on Berry singing The Algorithm, mm-hmm. and he didn't want to do it. He couldn't do it. He just couldn't do it any longer. And so he went and he made What's Going On. And Berry Gordy's like, listen, I know what your people want. They don't want Fistful of Mercury, and they don't want, all these songs about, brothers killing brothers, man. They want, My Girl,
right.
And he's like, dude, I can't do it. And so he plays it for Barry, and Barry is like, okay, go make it. And he's like, no, this is the album. And Barry thinks it's such a piece of junk that he was selling multi-platinums of anything that, meaning multi-millions of anything that he released on Marvin Gaye at this point. Yeah. Single, 2 or 3X, album 2 or 3X platinum, right? Well, he thinks it's such a piece of junk that he only pressed up 250,000 copies of it. And guess what he accidentally created? Scarcity.
Yeah.
And without scarcity, there's no value. So I'm like, that's interesting. And I didn't know why now I've carried that story in my brain. There's some other salacious information in that that article that I won't get into, which is really funny and interesting, but that's not the thing that I have found most compelling that I've always remembered. And there was a 6-month waiting list to get that album, and the only way that you could hear that album is if you went and found someone that had it, and you had to sit down and listen to it. And then all of a sudden, music gets to do what music does best, and that's create connection.
Yeah.
And right now, music isn't even set up to create connection. And I would like to help bring back where music is, so I just was literally, someone DM'd me, he's like, well, how am I supposed to share, your album if I buy it? Have someone come over to my house and play it for them? I'm like, yeah. Yes. And I don't think, as great as What's Going On is, I don't think it becomes what it becomes if Barry would have pressed up 1 million copies out of the get-go.
Sure.
I think it needed that 6-month gestation where it created connection, and it just created. And so, I think in hindsight, without, I think it takes some guts to trust that the music is going to do that. More importantly, that people are going to do that.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, you know what? Spotify is when I had the number one song in the world, Spotify couldn't have cared less about swinging.
Right.
They could not have cared less. They didn't do anything with it. Now, these are people that are making it number one song in the world, number 2 album in the world, that people are buying it, and Spotify is giving it the middle finger. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you're not giving me. These are people saying that this is the song that they want to be number one in the world, and you guys are treating it like something that it isn't. And you know what? I think you picked on the wrong dude.
Yeah.
I'm going to take my music and I'm going to go elsewhere, and I think I'm better than you. And I do. I think I'm better than the bullshit platform of Spotify.
Yeah.
And so this is where it's led me to this. My thought is, if ideas were stocks, the idea that people will no longer buy music, that stock is at an all-time low. Where are you supposed to buy stocks?
Yeah.
As low as possible. So I'm all in.
What's the response been?
Well, the response is
it's going to be twofold though, right? So response from your fans.
Yeah.
So you have a base.
Yeah.
And then the response from industry.
I don't care about the response from the industry. I absolutely do not care.
But what has it been?
Well, they haven't given any response because they don't want to.
Yeah.
They don't want to. But I will tell you this, my dear friend, Paul Roper, he won't get any heat for this now. I used to not use his name, but he just passed away. He's a dear friend of mine. He was the president of Dual Tone Records, which is, if y'all don't know, that's like the Lumineers, Mountjoy. It's a very successful label. And he's put out, albums of mine. And when I got done with the kid, we went out to breakfast, and the same day he was like, hey, if something happens to me, would you sing one of your songs at my service? I'm like, yeah. And then I was telling him about the kitty, and I think he was interested in maybe releasing it. And I was like, you know what? I always ask myself, what would you do if you couldn't fail? And in 2013, when Spotify first hit the shores of the United States, I told all the guys in leagues, we shouldn't put it up on Spotify and we should sell it for $100. And they were all like, hell no. I'm like, artists shouldn't be well behaved, man. Artists, and this is one thing I would tell the artists, stop being well behaved. Stop going along the flow. Stop. Yeah. It's not going to work out for you. Pay attention to your gut and know how crazy that it is telling you. Trust it, And so anyways, I was there having breakfast with Paul, and I said, well, Paul, I'm not going to put it up on any of the DSPs, and I'm going to sell it for $100, and I'm going to sell 1 million copies of it. And I don't know how that's going to happen, but that's what I'm going to do. And he's like, phew. And I said, well, Paul, you knowing what you know about the rig system,
yeah.
If you were me, would you put it up for free on Spotify? And what do you think he told me?
No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you know, I've told this story to over 300 people. Do you know there's only been 5 people that said the word yes? Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
That everyone knew what he said?
Yeah.
That's called common sense.
Yeah, well, it's also...
But who am I to go against common sense?
It's business.
It's business, but it's common sense.
It's common sense business.
Yes. So it goes back, it's not really that radical. It's like, no, he knew. And then he followed up with exactly what I knew. He's like, because you're going to put it up on Spotify and then the numbers aren't going to be good. You might get a couple playlists, but then you're completely screwed. And I think Spotify thinks that artists are way too scared because we need affirmation and,
artists are too scared.
They are too scared, and not me.
Yeah.
And so what's happened is I made more money in the 2-week pre-sale than I did 13 years combined on Spotify.
That's insane.
That's insane.
It shouldn't be insane.
Have I broken even? No, I've not, but I'm going to. But in those 13 years, one would speculate, if I heard this is how cynical I could be. I'd be like, well, he must not be any good. Must not be any good. Okay, well, in those 13 years, I had Super Bowl commercials, massive commercials for Bose, which was a worldwide campaign, tons of movies, tons of TV shows, a number 1 song in the world that people bought on Spotify, number 2 album, The Today Show, The Tonight Show, all of that. And Spotify was still like, and even right now, if I go to my monthly listeners on Spotify, I have about 8,500 listeners a month, which is horrible. But what they're telling me is, well, the market's telling us that you're worth $2,600 a year. That's what the payout for that is. I made $2,600 last month.
Yeah.
So they are way undervaluing me. And I would say to even whatever that equation is, to even someone that's like, well, I got 10 million, to any artist that's like, I got 10 million listeners a month, I would say the same equation proves like you're still being undervalued and they are still believing that you would rather give them that much more money than bet on yourself. So I'm creating a whole platform that will allow artists to set their own price. Because who am I to tell you what your music is worth? You know, I mean, I'll ask.
When you say you're creating a platform, what is that? What does that mean?
It's literally a platform that is going to be whatever Apple is to IBM. That's what this is to Spotify.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's going to allow artists to have access to their fans, but it's going to let artists, it's going to put the control back in the artist's hands. And, you know, I'll ask you this. Do you think that there's 500 people in the world? This is really what I'm after is, do you think that there's 500 people in this world that would spend $500,000 on a Jay-Z song if they knew they were the only ones that got to play it when they went over to their buddy's house or when their buddy got in the car or hung out?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Do the numbers. Jay-Z has never made that kind of money on one song.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm with you. And I think that, it's easy for, I'm going to try to frame this the right way. I'm not going to though. It's easy for, smaller artists to say, yeah, well, Thad's built this thing over the last whatever.
Yeah.
Last 20, 30 years. Yeah. He can do that. He can put out a record for $100. I can't do that. I only have, you know, whatever your followers are, whatever you think your base is.
Yes.
And what I say to that is that's also BS.
It's BS.
Because I can tell you right now, even as somebody who's not tracking anywhere musically, I could sell something for $100
Absolutely.
to 20, 30, 100 people.
Exactly.
And that's something to me.
Yes.
That's way more than what I would get streaming.
Yes. This is correct. And to go back to what I was saying about the Jay-Z, here's what I really want though. Do you think that Jay-Z would make the same sounding song if he knew he was going to make that kind of money?
No.
Don't you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Me too. And right now we don't hear music from ambition. We're hearing music. It's all based on scarcity. The whole system is based top to bottom. It's all run on scarcity.
It's also an easy, not easy, sorry. It's also another way of beating things like AI that's coming in.
Yeah.
For songwriting.
Yeah.
You're going to be challenged now. Like, oh, somebody's going to pay $100 for this record. I better make it.
Well, this platform is, there's no algorithm and it's AI free generated music, meaning that there's no music on it that is generated from AI.
What does this platform have a name?
It does.
What is it?
I can't share it yet.
You're not ready.
I'm not ready.
When you are ready.
But I got a brilliant team around me that's doing it. And
whenever you're ready, I would love to plug it on here.
I would love to. I would say to the artist that's like, they're like, well, you've got a bunch of people. Listen, I only had an email list of 1,300 people. That's not a lot.
Yeah, but also it's totally fair that you have a bunch. You have a career. You've been doing this.
Yes, but that is not a lot of people. And so here's one of the things that I had to learn and repent from. And I learned this mostly at church is, whoever you got is who you got. Those are your people.
Yes.
And I was more obsessed with who didn't show up than who did. I was more obsessed with the people that didn't buy my album than the ones that did. And what I should have been doing the entire time is double down and on the people that did show up and giving them value, giving them connection. Because if you do that, those 10 people turn into 30 and those 30 people, and you keep doubling down on that. And those 30 people, those are your fans. And I think part of the massive lie behind Spotify is like, well, what about the people you miss? Well, it's not a carrot, it's a noose, because the truer statement is if you aim for everybody, you miss everyone.
Yeah.
You miss everybody.
Right.
And so, that's the problem with Spotify is that you're betting that you're going to hit a lot of people. that you don't know, go with the people that you know. Go with the people that know
100%.
that love your music. You know,
But that's how it used to be made as well.
Yeah.
That's before all of this streaming stuff. You would tour and you would go find your fan base.
Yes.
Base.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the key word there.
Yeah. So I just decided, who do I make? I make music for people that value music as art. And if you don't value music as art, I don't make music for you.
Yeah.
Just plain and simple.
Right. I don't think that's so bad.
No, you gotta choose who you lose, right?
Choose who you lose. I like that. Last question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
You have one record to listen to as if it's the first time you've ever heard it.
Oh, wow.
Again. Now I'm going to tell you while you're thinking. I asked this question to Leland.
Yeah.
He was on here a few weeks ago. And guess which record he said. And the audio got lost, so I can't even prove it other than my brother was here. His record was To Be Loved.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So that's beautiful, man.
Isn't that great?
That's really, really special. I mean, of all the albums out there.
I know. That's what I said. It was like,
Man,
there's so many. I'm just kidding.
That's kind of overwhelming for me to hear.
It's great.
Yeah.
And from such a songwriting.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's
genius. I mean, he's just
immense talent. Yeah.
He's wild.
Yeah.
He was a good hang.
That's cool. So my album.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you tear up.
Man, if I could go back and hear any album for the first time. Oh, wow. That's hard.
It's a loaded question.
It would probably be Neil Young's Harvest Moon.
Yeah.
It would be Neil Young's Harvest Moon or Van Morrison's Moondance.
Okay.
Into the Mystic.
Life changers for you.
Yeah. Into the Mystic is, I had an amazing conversation with Tony Berg, who is a staunch atheist. And I've never met an atheist that wants to talk about God more than Tony Berg. I always would joke with him. I'm like, I think you're a righteous man. You're a very righteous man, a man of deep faith. And he'd bristle at the thing. I'm like, no, man, listen, I think in order for you to believe what you believe, you don't know, but for you to believe what you believe, I mean, that takes an immense amount of faith. And I don't have that amount of faith. You know, I'm jealous. We would talk about God while we were making this album, the existence or the non-existence of God. And we were talking about the recording of Into the Mystic. And Tony has impeccable taste. And it's one of those songs that you wouldn't think Tony would be obsessed over. Because Van Morrison is easy to dismiss, you know, maybe, possibly, if you're not really paying attention. But he says, you know, it's in one of his favorite recordings of all times. And he says, there's something else that happened in that room. And that is the closest thing that I ever heard Tony say that he believes that there might be some magic in this world that he doesn't understand.
Yeah.
And it took music to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thad Cockrell, thanks for being here. Where can people find you?
On my website,
find the record,
thadcockrell.com. It's the only place you'll be able to find the album.
You get a small taste of it here on this podcast. With,
and you know, if you go on my Instagram, there's some snippets of songs, but yeah, and it's not going up on. If people are holding out for Spotify, it ain't happening. And then I'm gonna keep releasing all my music in the same way until we get this platform built, and then I'll put it all up there. And
amazing,
yeah.
Well, thanks so much for being here.
Brandon, thank you for having me, man. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, man.
Let's do it again.
Great questions. You're good at this.
Worktapes is produced by me, Brandon Carswell. This episode was filmed and edited by Sean Carswell. Don't forget to like and subscribe everywhere you listen to Worktapes.